The ultimatum. The broadcast came at dawn, hijacking every screen, every frequency, every satellite orbiting Earth. The image was unmistakably alien. Tall, armored figures standing in rigid formation, their skin a deep obsidian, their faces chiseled and brutal. At the center stood Emperor Vokrath, towering over his subordinates, his crimson cape flowing over massive plated shoulders. His golden eyes gleamed with contempt. "People of Earth," his voice rumbled, deep and guttural, resonating through the airwaves. "You are unclaimed. Your world is untouched. But that will end now. The Zorthan Empire has come to offer you a choice. Kneel and serve, or burn and perish." Across the planet, billions watched, breath held, hearts pounding. Humanity had always feared this day, the day when something far greater than them would descend from the stars. But what none of them had expected was the sheer arrogance in the alien's tone, as if Earth's fate had already been sealed. "We grant you 3 cycles to decide. Surrender, and your species will be spared the pain of resistance. Refuse." The Emperor tilted his head, smiling in a way that made the hairs on human necks stand on end. "And we shall take your world by force. We have done so 1,000 times before. You are nothing new." The transmission ended, plunging the world into silence. But that silence didn't last long. The Council of Defiance. The United Defense Council convened in Geneva within the hour. World leaders, generals, and strategists gathered in a massive underground war room, their faces tense under the dim glow of holographic projections. Satellite images showed massive Zorthan warships, each the size of cities, holding position at the edge of the moon. The threat was real. The deadline was set. "We cannot fight them," said Chancellor Antonov of the Eurasian Union, his voice grim. "Their fleets outnumber ours 100 to 1. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. If we resist, they will wipe us out." "You assume surrender means survival," countered President Okafor of the African Federation. "Look at their conquests. Every race they have spared has become a slave to their empire. Is that survival?" Debates raged, voices rising in anger and fear. Some argued for negotiation, for buying time. Others demanded immediate military action, even if it meant annihilation. Then General Elias Carter stood. His presence alone commanded attention. Broad-shouldered, battle-hardened, the kind of leader who had seen the worst of humanity and still fought for its best. He waited for silence before speaking, his voice unwavering. "We do not surrender," he said simply. "Not to tyrants. Not to monsters. They want war. Then we give them a war they will never forget." A murmur spread through the room. "They think we are weak," Carter continued, pacing. "They have fought civilizations that bent at the first strike, that rolled over and accepted chains. They have never faced us. We are not prey. We are not cattle. We are human, and that means we fight. We don't have the firepower." Antonov shot back. "We don't need firepower," Carter replied. "We need strategy. Guerrilla tactics, electronic warfare, planetary defenses. They have strength, but we have adaptation. We don't fight their war. We make them fight ours." Okafor nodded slowly. Others hesitated but listened. Then from the shadows, a voice spoke up, Dr. Aisha Patel, head of the Global Strategic Initiative. "General Carter is right," she said, her analytical gaze fixed on the holographic star maps. "They believe this will be easy. That's our advantage. If we make the cost of war unbearable, they will rethink their conquest." A heavy pause settled over the room. Then one by one, heads nodded. It wasn't unanimous, but it was decided. Earth would fight. The response. As the Zorthans watched from orbit, Earth's answer came. A single transmission, delivered back to the Emperor himself. The face of General Carter appeared on Zorthan screens, his expression cold and unreadable. "You demand surrender?" he said. "Come and take it." Across Earth, factories roared to life. Satellites realigned, transmitting coded signals to hidden military bases. Cyber warfare teams prepared to blind Zorthan sensors. Troops mobilized, civilians trained, weapons assembled. Humanity had 3 cycles before war came to their doorstep. And when it did, they would be ready. The The Zorthans expected a broken species. What they got instead was a fight to the death. The War of Attrition. The war began exactly 3 cycles after the ultimatum expired. The Zorthan fleet descended in a wave of fire and steel, blotting out the sky over Earth's major cities. Massive dropships, each the size of a skyscraper, rained from orbit, unloading columns of Crimson Guard warriors, towering brutes encased in gleaming battle armor. They moved in formation, weapons humming with energy, their confidence absolute. They had conquered hundreds of worlds before. Earth was just another. They were wrong. The ambush at New Berlin. The Zorthans expected open battle. Instead, they found themselves walking into a nightmare. In New Berlin, one of their largest drop zones, their forces advanced through eerily empty streets, marching in perfect formation. Their sensors detected no threats. Their commanders reported no resistance. They were certain humanity had already broken. Then, at precisely 1,400 hours, the first strike hit. A city block detonated in a wave of fire, collapsing steel and concrete onto entire squads of Crimson Guard. Zorthan's soldiers scattered, roaring in confusion. The sky above them flickered, and suddenly all communications blacked out. Earth's cyber warfare teams had just blinded the invaders. And then the humans attacked. From underground tunnels and shattered buildings, fire teams emerged like ghosts, clad in adaptive camouflage. Snipers picked off high-ranking officers, their heads exploding in bursts of purple ichor. Drone swarms, pre-programmed to bypass energy shielding, zipped through the streets, deploying micro-explosives directly onto Zorthan power cores. The Zorthans, used to fighting open field battles, tried to rally, but there was no front line. The humans struck from all sides, then vanished before the aliens could retaliate. By nightfall, New Berlin was a slaughterhouse. Thousands of Zorthans lay dead, their war machines twisted ruins. The Crimson Guard, once feared across the stars, had suffered their first true defeat. The resistance spreads. Across the planet, similar ambushes unfolded. In Tokyo, entire battalions of Zorthans were funneled into tight urban corridors, where molten plasma mines turned the streets into death traps. In the Amazon, human forces lured invaders into dense jungle terrain, where the aliens' advanced armor became a hindrance, and guerrilla fighters struck with bioengineered neurotoxins. In New York, Earth's electronic warfare teams hijacked enemy drones, turning the Zorthans' own technology against them. Entire platoons were gunned down by their own machines before they even realized what had happened. The war that was supposed to be over in hours dragged into weeks. The Zorthans began to break. High above Earth, aboard the warlord's Wrath, Emperor Vokrath watched the reports in furious silence. The crimson glow of the war table reflected in his golden eyes as he listened to the grim updates from his generals. "This is unacceptable," rumbled Commander Vector, his fanged mouth twitching in frustration. "The humans do not fight with honor. They do not even fight as warriors. They fight like survivors." Vokrath's voice was calm but deadly. He turned to face his officers, his heavy boots echoing in the silent chamber. "They have no honor," he said, "because honor is a weakness. They do not fight fair because they are not fools." A deep growl rumbled through the assembled warlords. Vokrath clenched his fists. He had seen this before. Rarely, on some distant worlds, civilizations that refused to die. He had crushed them all, and he would crush humanity, too. Deploy the purge protocols he ordered. No more occupation. No more mercy. Burn their cities. Let them see what defiance earns them. Humanity's response. The sky burned. Zorthan ships, abandoning all attempts at conquest, began orbital bombardments. Cities were reduced to ash in seconds. Entire regions were wiped from existence. The death toll skyrocketed. Humanity refused to break. As the fire fell from the heavens, Earth's leaders issued a single command: no retreat, no surrender. Nations that had once been divided now fought as one. Underground bunkers converted into war factories churned out drones, weapons, and cyber warfare units at an impossible pace. Humanity didn't just endure. They adapted. Even as the cities burned, the war shifted into space. Human-engineered stealth craft, fitted with reverse-engineered Zorthan technology, launched from hidden bases on the moon, striking deep into enemy fleets. Cyber assault teams infiltrated Zorthan battle networks, forcing ships to turn on each other. The Zorthans were the mightiest conquerors in the galaxy, and they were losing, the moment that changed everything. Then, intelligence units intercepted a critical transmission. Vokrath himself was coming to Earth. The Zorthan Emperor, furious at the resistance, had decided to lead his forces personally to crush humanity with his own hands. General Carter received the news with a grim smile. "Good," he said. "Let him come." Because humanity didn't just want to win. They wanted to make an example of him. The fall of the Emperor. The sky was black with smoke when Emperor Vokrath descended onto Earth. His warship, the Warlord's Wrath, cut through the atmosphere like a blade, its engines screaming as it deployed his personal guard, the last elite warriors of the Zorthan Empire. Their arrival was meant to be a turning point, the moment where humanity finally broke before the might of the Empire. But humanity had no intention of breaking. They had been waiting for him. The trap is set. Vokrath's forces landed in New Berlin, or what was left of it. The once thriving city was now a wasteland of twisted steel and shattered glass. Smoke curled from collapsed skyscrapers. The silence was unnatural, unsettling. No human soldiers in sight. But General Elias Carter was watching. From an underground command bunker 2 miles away, Carter and his strike team, Revenant, monitored the Emperor's movements. Satellite feeds tracked his forces, their crimson armor glowing in the thermal scans. Hundreds of them, marching in perfect unison, confident that no mere humans could stand against them. "He's here," whispered Captain Rain, Revenant's second-in-command, her voice tight with anticipation. Carter nodded. "Then let's end this." The Battle of the Dead City. The moment Vokrath and his soldiers reached the city's central square, the trap was sprung. EMP blasts detonated across the battlefield, shutting down every Zorthan communication system. Holographic decoys flickered to life, displaying entire battalions of human soldiers where none existed. Vokrath's forces turned in confusion. Then the real attack began. Snipers fired from the ruined buildings, picking off Zorthan commanders before they could even give orders. Drones swarmed from the shadows, their plasma cutters slicing through armor. Explosive charges detonated under the streets, collapsing entire sections of the battlefield, dragging Zorthans into fire and rubble. Vokrath roared in fury. "Cowards!" he bellowed, raising his warblade. "Face me!" But the humans wouldn't fight on his terms. They fought to win. His Crimson Guard tried to rally, forming a defensive line, but they were being hunted. One by one, they fell, until Vokrath himself was the last one standing, surrounded by the bodies of his finest warriors. His golden eyes burned with hatred as shadows emerged from the smoke. Strike Team Revenant. The elite human operatives moved in silence, weapons raised. Their orders were clear: capture the Emperor alive. The Emperor falls. Vokrath charged first. Despite the losses, despite the overwhelming odds, he would not allow himself to be taken like an animal. He moved like a hurricane, swinging his massive blade at the nearest soldier, cleaving the air where a human had stood just a moment before. But humans were faster. A shot rang out, then another. Explosive rounds struck his armor, sending him staggering back. He howled in rage, swinging wildly, but there was nothing to hit. Carter stepped forward, face to face with the Emperor. Vokrath's breath came in ragged gasps. His golden eyes locked onto the human general. "Pathetic," he growled. "You fight like vermin, not warriors." Carter simply tilted his head. "And yet, here you are, on your knees." The realization sank in. His empire was crumbling. His soldiers were dead. His war was lost. And then the final blow. A sharp click, restraints locking around his wrists. The great Emperor Vokrath, conqueror of 1,000 worlds, was now a prisoner of Earth. The message to the galaxy. The world watched as the transmission was broadcast across the Zorthan Empire. There was no speech, no grand declaration, just a single image. The once mighty emperor dragged through the ruined streets of New Berlin, his crimson armor cracked, his golden eyes no longer gleaming with arrogance. His own people saw it. His remaining forces saw it. Panic spread through the Zorthan ranks. Their empire, built on fear, now knew fear for the first time. Carter stood before the cameras, looking directly into them, his message clear. We do not bow. We do not break. We are human. The empire begins to crumble. The effect was immediate. Zorthan generals, now leaderless and terrified, began retreating. Some surrendered. Others fled. The mighty empire, undefeated for centuries, was fracturing. Humanity had done the impossible. They had turned the tide. But Carter knew this was only the beginning. Now, the real question remained, what do you do with a fallen god? What do you do with a fallen god? The war was over, but the battle for the future had just begun. Across the galaxy, Zorthan forces were in full retreat. Without Emperor Vokrath, the once mighty empire was fracturing. Some warlords sought to claim the throne, others abandoned their conquests, and many simply vanished into the void, unwilling to face the shame of defeat. But on Earth, in the ruins of New Berlin, the question remained. What do you do with a god who has fallen? The trial of the conqueror. Emperor Vokrath was held in a high-security containment facility deep beneath the Arctic ice. No throne, no soldiers, no weapons. Just a cell. He was given no audience, no courtesan. Instead, the trial was humanity's decision to make. In Geneva, world leaders and military commanders gathered, debating the fate of the most feared warlord in the galaxy. Some wanted him executed. Some argued he should be used as a bargaining chip, a means to negotiate peace with whatever remained of the Zorthan Empire. But General Carter had a different idea. We don't kill him, he said, his voice firm. We put him on display. The room fell silent. You want to parade him around like a trophy? President Okafor asked. No, Carter said. We show him to the galaxy. We show everyone what happens when you come to our world and try to take what isn't yours. The proposal was ruthless, calculated, and undeniably human. Instead of executing Vokrath and making him a martyr, they would humiliate him. They would strip him of his legend, of his power, and make it clear to the entire universe. Humanity was not to be conquered. Ever. Again. The broadcast. When the broadcast began, billions across the galaxy tuned in. There was no grand speech, no declaration of victory, just a simple image. Vokrath, chained, dressed in tattered remains of his imperial armor, dragged through the same streets his army once sought to control. The mighty warlord, who had burned entire civilizations to the ground, was now nothing more than a prisoner of the very species he had underestimated. Across the stars, Zorthan commanders, warlords, and soldiers saw their leader like never before. The once invincible emperor broken, defeated. And in that moment, the empire ceased to exist. The aftermath. The Zorthan forces that remained in occupied systems abandoned their posts overnight. The warlords who once fought under Vokrath turned on each other, scrambling for power. Some worlds, once enslaved by the empire, saw the broadcast and rose up in rebellion. For the first time in centuries, the Zorthan banner was torn down across dozens of systems. Earth had done more than just survive. They had shattered an empire with nothing but strategy, defiance, and sheer human ruthlessness. The final conversation. Days later, Carter visited Vokrath's cell. The emperor sat on the cold metal bench, his golden eyes dimmed, his once imposing frame slumped with the weight of defeat. You should have killed me, Vokrath muttered, his voice hoarse. Carter leaned against the wall, arms crossed. That's what you would have done. Vokrath sneered. Yes, because I'm a conqueror. I take, I burn, I destroy. And look where that got you, Carter said, voice like steel. The emperor let out a slow breath. For the first time in his long, brutal reign, he had no answer. You wanted war, Carter continued. You thought we'd beg, that we'd break. But you never understood us. We don't fight to conquer. We fight to survive. And when you try to take that from us, we make damn sure you regret it. Silence. Then, the faintest trace of a smile, touched Vakratha's lips. Not of amusement, but of something else, something deeper. Perhaps, he murmured, you were never meant to be conquered. Carter pushed off the wall, turning toward the door. No, he said, we never were. The door sealed shut behind him, leaving the former emperor alone in the dark. Epilogue: The Legacy of Defiance. The war had ended, but its echoes would last forever. Humanity was no longer just another civilization among the stars. They were the species that had defied an empire, the species that had dragged a god through the streets. And the galaxy would never forget.